Hey everybody, happy Thursday. You did it. We're almost through this first week together. I hope the videos for calculation are helping you. I just want to remind you that tomorrow your work will be more of a quiz format, just like in class. So that said, let's turn to our calculations. So our first one is talking about using 63 hundredths divided by 6. So I rewrote my problem with this first part right under the bar, and then this is what's outside. Remember, this is where we're going to look to see if I have to move any decimals. Because there's nothing here, I'm just going to bring this decimal up. Now, what I want to caution you about is I know for me, I'm using money makes sense as when I'm making sense of decimals, right? So this is like 63 cents being divided between 6 people. Let's stop and think for a second. Is anybody getting a whole dollar? I hope you said no. Just because, right, if anybody was getting a whole dollar, we would need at least $6 here. And this is 63 cents. That's coins only, everybody. Okay, so let's talk about our making an estimate then. Well, let's think about that. If this 63, if I'm making an estimate, that's pretty close to, let's call it 60 cents. If we had 60 cents and we split that between 6 people, wouldn't that be around 10 cents per person? So I know that my number here is going to be around 10 cents or like 10 hundredths, right? So let's move to the division then. So if I have 6, right, once I put my decimal up here, I'm just going to ignore it and pretend like it's regular division problem. So if I look here and I have 6, I'm making groups of 6. Well, I can make one group of 6. So, and remember, if we're taking a look and we have our multiplication chart, we're going to use this number here for the column that we're looking at, and this is the multiple or the part in there that we're going to try to get to that number or as close to that number as we possibly can. Okay, so 6 is a multiple of 6. That's one group of that. Remember, if I scroll down, I get to the 6, I move to the left, and that's where I have my column. And I'm sorry, guys, I don't have my multiplication chart right here, or I'd show you. So 6 times 1 is going to give me 6. And I'm going to subtract. 6 minus 6 is 0. And then here's my B, right, my bring down. So I'm going to bring down my 3. And just a quick review, if I have this number when after I subtract, if this number here is larger than what I was dividing by, I know that I made a mistake and I can make at least one more group here, right? So, okay, so now I have 3. Well, if I have 3 items, can I make a group of 6? Hopefully you said no, because my answer is going to be 0, right? Because I cannot. 3 is only half of it. So today we're going to keep going as well with using the decimals, right? 6 times 0 is 0. Anything times 0 is 0. So then I'm going to subtract. So I end up with 3 here. And we know 3 is smaller than 6, so we're okay. So now we're going to keep on going. So we're going to put a 0 here, and we're going to bring that down. So now I have 30. And I'm looking to divide that into groups of 6. And I know 30 is a multiple of 6. I'm moving that over, sorry. 30 is a multiple of 6. I can make 5 groups. 6 times 5 is 30. And when I subtract, I get 0. So there's my answer. And obviously, that is very close to my original estimate. This is just like a half more, right? Okay. When I talk about multiplying my decimals, right, in each case here, there's 2 digits and there's 2 digits, so it won't matter. So I just kind of wrote my problem again the way that it was presented. When I mean it won't matter, it's because, remember, however many digits are here on the second part, that's how many add-ins or things I'm going to add together should be there. So next I'm going to make my estimate. This is like doing 8. I'm going to write it over here so you can see better. 8 times, and I'm going to round this up to 10 because 9.5 is going to round up to 10. Plus, whenever I do anything times 10, that's so much easier because I'm just going to do like this times the 1. So it's going to be the 8, and I know I'm going to have 1 0 in my answer too. So this number here should be about 80. Okay? And I know, remember, I rounded up, so that's going to make a little bit of a difference. So I'm going to start here on the right, and I'm going to do 5 times 1 is 5. 5 times 8 is 40. When I move over here to my 9, remember this is moving into like the next spot. So I'm going to put my 0 as a placeholder. And then I do this number times each one again, right? So 9 times 1 is 9. 9 times 8 is 72. And then I move over here to the right and I'm going to add 5. 0 plus 9 is 9. 4 plus 2 is 6. And 7. And then we're going to do our decimals, right? And so I look after my decimal. I have 2 places. So I start behind the number and I move it over 2 places. So I end up with 76 and 95 hundredths. Excuse me, that's really close to 80, close to my estimate. So moving on to our whole number division. So we have the same, and Mrs. Marshall, I didn't write my steps. Divide, multiply, subtract, bring down. And I rewrote the problem. So I have 3,216 divided by 2. Well, I'm going to do this I'm going to break this up for you so we kind of take a look. To make this a little easier, I took my numbers because it looks kind of big when I do it that way. But if I use this idea, right, I know that when I have 30, right, if I divide that by 2, or I can use my fingers and think 3 divided by 2 gives me 1, and then I have a half of another. So if I move over 1, my decimal moves over 1, that's 15. And then I'm taking a look, and if I take this 3,000 and I divide it by 2, I should end up with 1,500, right? Because if I do those two together, I will end up 1,500 plus 1,500 will give me 3,000. And if I take 200 and I split that into 2 groups, I should end up with 100, right? And so when I add those together, I should end up with around 1,600. This is letting me go just to the hundreds. I could go even less because I could even take this 16 that's here and divide that by 2, and then I know I'd get 8. So my estimate would be more of an actual answer, but this gives me a better idea that my answer should be around 1,600. And this is a good idea to do with large numbers because a lot of times we get freaked out by the big numbers and it's really not a big deal. You and I both know you got it. You're just freaking yourself out and don't do that. Okay, so we go to division. Let's start on the left. We have our 3 and we're dividing that into groups of 2. Well, I know I can make one group. So then I'm going to do 2 times 1 gives me 2. And I subtract that. 3 minus 2 gives me 1. And then I'm going to bring down my 2. Now I have 12. Well, when I take my 12 and I divide it into groups of 2, I know I have 6. 2 times 6 gives me 12. And remember, if I'm using my multiplication chart, I'm using this number where I'm looking down the column for the number that I'm dividing by to see if that is a multiple. And if that's not a multiple, which multiple is closest to it? Because that's going to be how much I get when I multiply. And when I divide, this is my group that I'm getting. So when I found 12 is a multiple of 6, remember I went down 12's column? I went down 2's column, I found 12, and when I move over to the side, I found I have 6 groups, which is the same as 2 times 6 gives me 12, right? And then I'm going to subtract, and that's going to give me 0. And I'm going to bring this one down here, so I get 1. If I have 1, I cannot make a group of 2. 2 times 0 is 0. 1 minus 0 is 1, and I'm going to bring down my 6, and I have 16. Well, I know 2 times 8 gives me 16. And there's my 0. Whoops, sorry, you can see it all. So there's my answer. 1,608 or 1,608. I hope you did well, and let me know if you need more help.